Friends, this is an exciting day for this congregation as we invite Pam Rocker, who is a former staff person in communications and then in Affirming ministry, who is with us and in her departure promised to help us find her replacement. And so we took time and we worked hard, and we are thrilled that this church is welcoming Keith Murray as our new Affirming person. And I'm going to get out of the way and let these two be in conversation so you get to know Keith and the ministry that is so important to each and every one of us in this church and in this city and indeed around the world. So we welcome the two of you, and I'll get out of the way.
Yay. Good morning. So great to see so many of you, and so excited to introduce Keith to you. Some of you may have met Keith in the past few months as Keith has attended here, but excited for you to know more about him today. As John mentioned, I was here for about 7 years, and I'm like Cher, I just keep coming back. So many things that are like Cher for me, but so I've been doing just a couple of things during the last 6 or 7 months as we've sort of transitioned, and we did look. We had a lot of amazing people who applied, but it was really with Keith that we saw and began to dream about what is possible for the next step in our Affirming ministry here at Hillhurst. What I wanted to share, we're going to get into talking to Keith, which is going to be the most important and interesting part. But somebody said to me the other day, okay, there's a lot of new folks who are in our community, which is great. And so maybe explain a little bit about what this role is, because we sort of say affirming, but as you know from the trivia question, there's only 2 people who do this in Alberta, and it may be 2 people in Canada. I haven't met anybody else who has had it as a paid position at their ministry. So that's about 3,200 ministries across Canada, and we are one of a handful for sure. So at Hillhurst, what the Affirming ministry role basically does is has 4 different focuses. So one is one-on-one resourcing. We get a lot of people who email us and say, am I okay? Could I actually come here? Is what I've been told true, that I will be excluded from the faith communities that I want to be a part of? Because maybe that's happened to them many, many times. And we have everything from 13-year-olds to 80-year-olds contacting us weekly with that question. The second one is inter-church sort of partnerships. We partner with a lot of other churches over the years, trying to maintain and uphold our affirming statement and make that tangible, make that something that's active and alive. And like we talk about PIE, P-I-E, public, intentional, and explicit. The third one is sort of internal church education. So everything is an evolving adventure, including language and identity and all of those things. And so we try to sort of keep up with that and make sure that we're a place where it's always going to be a safe and a brave space for people to come. And the next one is partnerships in the community. So we have established a lot of trust in our community, which is very unique for faith communities to be accepted and embraced, and we have upheld that trust. And so those are sort of the 4 things that we focus on and that this role sort of encompasses. And it'll look different moving forward, but those are the things that sort of are the heartbeat of the Affirming ministry. This role is very unique, and so we need a unique person. And Keith is definitely that. And so I will be working with Keith and for a couple of months, but really, if Keith just went off today, it would be amazing. So let's learn a little bit more about him. Okay, Keith, you're here.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here today.
Yes, yeah. And we are too. So tell me a little bit about what drew you to Hillhurst.
Well, that banner outside, I think, is an important one, and it's because it says, wherever you're at, whoever you are, you're welcome here. And this is one of the few places that actually walks the walk and talks the talk. A lot of churches say that, but I came and I felt that. And I also felt that there's space to question here, which is really important. And I'm from Calgary originally, and I've been away for about 6-7 years in Vancouver. And I actually grew up in the South and had met John when he was at Deer Run. And so it was nice to come back. My personal journey, I was raised in the Pentecostal church, and which, was a very interesting experience growing up. And then when I started going through puberty and figuring out, okay, maybe there's not really space for me here anymore. And that was the beginning of a journey that has taken me a long time to come back into a space like this. And I am really grateful to be here. And I never would have thought that I would be up here on this stage, making this space even more welcoming. And it just feels like a incredible opportunity to do the good work and spread the good news. And I'm really, really, really excited to be a part of this. So thank you for welcoming me to your space. This is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when you saw, obviously this is not a common role, you don't see a affirming coordinator posted very often, and so when you saw that, what about the position, about what it sort of embodied, drew you to say, this is something that is drawing me in?
I had just moved back to Calgary. I wasn't too sure what I was doing here. I knew I wanted to be closer to my family again, and my mother saw the ad on Facebook for the position here, and I looked it over and I was like, oh, that's me, check mark. They were looking for this, check mark. What? This is a role that exists? Like this is something that I could do and get paid to do? What? Yeah. This is what I've been doing in my life already. Yeah. I've worked, my background, I grew up here, as I told you, and I went to art school. I did a degree in media arts and digital technologies, and I started exploring performance, video, theater as ways to express myself. But always my work was touching on themes on gender, sexuality, spirituality, and I developed more of an interest in working with community. So I started working with a psychologist here, Dr. Beth Hedva, and developing workshops and leadership programs for queer and trans youth. And then in Vancouver, I was doing programs working with people affected by mental illness and trauma and addiction, and working with the queer and trans community out there as well. And I'm so excited to find a position where I can use all of my skills to support my community. It just feels amazing. So, yeah, it just was like a good fit. So, yeah.
Yeah. Why do you think, obviously you've shared a few things about sort of why it touches you on a personal level, but why do you think this sort of work really matters to you personally? Because I can tell that it's not, a lot of people think, oh, cool job, but it actually can be quite challenging. So what about it really matters to you personally?
I know what it is to feel shut out, and I'll tell you a story. So obviously I told you a little bit about my leave with the Pentecostal church, but another really formative experience, I was 14, and my friend, who we were both sort of just exploring our sexuality and discovering who we were, told me one day that he thought all gays should be shot. And I was like, what? Okay, where did he hear this? And then a few months later, he put a gun inside his mouth, and that experience changed my life. I was at his funeral, and his mother was crying and was asking the priest, would he be in hell? And the priest wouldn't confirm one way or another, just said we could pray for him. And in that moment, I was, as a 14-year-old, like, no, that's not God. I knew God to be love inside. I'm like, who is this person standing on behalf of God saying this? And it began the sort of beginning of a journey for me of trying to have an authentic connection with God in a way to take on these institutions of oppression that were messed up in a misinterpretation of what the Bible was talking about, because there was a disconnect there from what I felt and knew inside from what I was experiencing. So my journey took me through many different things where I left the Christian faith, and I mean, I always have been a Christian and still a Christian, but I needed to explore what else was out there, what other people had to say about truth and God and spirit. And in studying Buddhism, I ended up taking the Bodhisattva Vows, which is like a vow where you commit, recognizing that if you were to cross into the gates of heaven, to the gates of nirvana, as long as there's other people on the other side suffering, how could you enjoy being in heaven? And I really took that to heart, and I realized, yeah, we're all in this together. So as long as there's people who need support, need to be seen, need to know they're not alone, I think it's my duty to be there. And it's not just my duty, but it's my joy, like to participate in that, because yeah, the party, we gotta all go to the party together. So, you know, that's where it is for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
My pleasure. Yeah.
If there's a few things that you would want the Hillhurst community to know about you, what are a couple of things that come to mind?
That I pretty much always cry in church. So if you see me crying.
A lot of us do, that's fine.
No, I don't know. If I have green fingers, I've just developed a fetish for fountain pens, so it's usually just because I'm always getting ink on my fingers. I don't know. I think more importantly, I want you to know that I'm here for you, and as I know and hope that you would be here for me too. And I'm here to listen, not here to judge. I know what that feels like, so if you want to share anything or need some support or help at any point, and there's no dumb questions, so, you know, I know there's a lot of things shifting with our understanding of identity and language, and I would love to be a resource for any of you if you have any questions about stuff like that, or your own journey, or whatever. So, yeah, I'm here for you.
Yeah. And I think this is really important too. How will you deal with people comparing your hair with mine? You're doing pretty well, actually.
I brought some mousse in this morning.
Gonna get you a huge
like,
Costco
oh,
case of mousse. Okay, well, you'll be fine. I think, you know, this role really, I've seen its impact in the community, and whether or not people ever come to Hillhurst, and I think most of you really, really know this and get this, it is a huge source of hope, even if people never come into our building. There are people who write and say, you know, I drove by on Sunday mornings for 7 years, and it wasn't until I had just a little ounce more courage that I could come in here. And that's something that not many of us can imagine or picture, but I think that idea of visibility is really key. And so, how do you feel, why do you think it's so important for a role like this, and a community like this, and a voice like this, and making people feel seen like we've been talking about?
Well, I think our community has known what it's like to be in the shadows and to be in closets, and I think it's the deepest yearning of the human soul to be known, to be seen, to be visible. I also know how much tremendous courage it takes to open up and be vulnerable and share what you have inside. But it's in doing that that we provide access to allowing the love to flow, to the real miracle of what communion is, in taking us outside of our limited sense of self and expanding us into a greater reality that is so much richer and so much more beautiful. And as long as there are other institutions out there that are keeping people in closets and in the shadows, I think it's important that we remain visible to allow people to know it's okay to be seen, that what you have inside, that the love you share and feel has a right to be seen. I got to meet one of my heroes this summer. I never thought this would have happened. Lana Wachowski, she is one of the creators of The Matrix, which you probably have all seen, but many other films as well. And she, in a speech a while ago, said something, invisibility is indivisible from visibility. And meeting her, I had like a moment. I didn't know what to say, and I was really quick, and all I could say to her was, thank you. Because of your work, I felt seen. And because she was visible and went out on a limb and created art and shared who she was, I felt a connection. And I think that's vitally important. The next day at Pride, she was wearing a shirt that said, art is love made visible. And I think that's what it's about, is going out on a limb, creating something, whether it's art or sharing your voice or your presence. By doing that, you bring love into the world, and we give each other the opportunity to really open up and connect. So if there's any way I can step into a role and be more visible and make it easier for others to be more visible, it would be a real honor. So, yeah, thanks, Pam.
Yeah. So sort of the last thing, I was thinking about this when Sheena did the quiz, and it was when Pride started, the first Pride Parade in 1990. And the interesting thing about that is that there was about 100 people who sort of walked through the streets. There weren't really a lot of people watching or cheering from the sides. And most of the people who were walking were wearing paper bags on their heads because they were afraid that they'd be fired or beaten up, or their picture taken, and different things sort of perpetuated on them. And I think it's really important. That's only 28 years ago, right? And there's still a lot of those different challenges. And so I think that speaks to a lot of the things that we're talking about. And I really thank this community and the leadership here for your support of what easily could be a role that during hard times, just like art or just like things that maybe sort of seem on the fringe, could have been minimized or sort of, pushed down. And I think it says a lot about who you are and what you believe in, that this is something that you say, this is key. And so I really hope, Keith, that you feel seen, and that you do as well in the work that's to come, because we're all affirming coordinators. And so I hope that you feel that sense of community here and are able to flourish among these great folks. And so we welcome you warmly into this family.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
in the spirit of play this year, I also want to commit that we're going to have a lot of fun together. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so we have a song that the wonderful Justin is going to sing that talks to this sort of idea of visibility that we want to embody. So, thanks, Justin.